Hey guys, James with Torches and Tactical, and today we're going over the Cyansky H3. Now this is considered by Cyansky to be a multicolor, long-range hunting flashlight. Now the multicolor aspect is the most interesting part of why you might want to pick up the H3 over any other available flashlight. But before I get into that party trick, I just want to let you guys know that we are doing a giveaway this video. So we are going to be placing random numbers here and here and well, I'm not going to tell you where and I'm not going to tell you when, but there will be a series of numbers randomly displayed across the screen throughout this video. All you guys need to do is watch the entire video from front to back, collect all those numbers, and send them to our email address at youtube@torchesandtactical.com. And we're going to collect all of those entries for 1 week. Then we'll select a lucky winner for this week's prize. And this week's prize is a Wurkkos FC12. Now it will be the full kit, including the battery and everything. But we'll select one of you guys to win this FC12. We'll get in touch with you and get our prize out to you as fast as possible. So make sure to like, share, and subscribe so we can continue doing stuff like this. And you'll be in the know on our next giveaway. Alright, with that business aside, let's get back to the light. Now, like I said, this is the Cyansky H3, and it does have an LED from Cree. It's the XHP35 high that shines out at 1300 lumens to a max beam distance of 400 meters, or 40,000 candelas, if you're one who likes those numbers. All this is powered by one single 21700 cell with an orange peel reflector to help smooth things out a bit, and all this in a pretty nice aluminum body that's covered in a Type 3 hard anodized coating, so you have the IPX8 waterproof rating. Now I said earlier that Cyansky calls this a multicolor long-range hunting flashlight. And wow, that's a mouthful. But that's because this light can output white, green, and red. All from that Cree LED, thanks to the use of a patented built-in rotating filter system. While it is getting to be more commonplace, there still aren't many lights that can do all three of those colors. Now most others will use removable filters, which means that they can either be cumbersome or you have to carry extra pieces with you. This does away with that process by including the entire filter assembly inside the actual head of the light. Now Cyansky suggests that the green color could be used for hunting feral hogs or boar, and the red can be used for hunting deer or coyotes. Now let's check out how the Cyansky would arrive to you. Alright, the H3 does come in a laminated cardboard box, and inside there is a plastic insert, so on its way to you it's not getting thrashed about. Obviously in the light you do get the Cyansky H3. You get that 21700 battery I was talking about. In addition to those obvious choices, you do get a USB-C charging cable, a couple of spare O-rings. One of the more uncommon options, you do get a spare rear tail cap button, a lanyard. You also get your H3 user manual and warranty card with all the information on how to fill that out. And finally, another thing you don't normally see that often, you get a small holster. This will hold the light attached to your belt, but we'll go over that here in a little bit. Now additionally, the H3 does have optional accessories, but unfortunately we won't be able to show you since we don't have them with us. For those interested, those do include a remote tactical switch that replaces the tail cap, and the pressure pad on that remote switch includes both a forward clicky switch as well as a momentary switch. In addition, the switch is attached to any firearms with a standard Picatinny rail, and in addition to this there are many different mounting options that Cyansky shows on their website, and these range from rail mounted designs to double tube mounts. Now with the H3, or really any of Cyansky's hunting lineup, one of the first things you'll notice when you pick it up is how slim the body tube is. It's 23.9 millimeters or 0.9 inches at its slimmest, which makes it barely wider than some 18650 lights. There's also no knurling on the body tube, but the tail cap does have slight grooves for grip and other machining that the H3 has. Up here on the head, there is a bit of knurling that looks like it might be incredibly shallow heat fins, but to me it looks more like a very fine thread. Now the H3 does have two switches and a rotating control for the filters. The physical switch is a forward clicky, which is standard for anything with a rear switch, as it provides momentary with a half press, or gives you a full-time on with a full press. Now it is easy to press with your thumb, as the tail cap does have indents. Also, it does have a gray E-switch that sits proud and is easy to find. Now, I say that, but it's easy to find if you're holding your light in a more standard torch configuration, but if you hold it tactically, if you have your thumb on the tail cap, it does make it kind of hard to reach with that pinky. But let's be honest, the star of the show here is that rotating filter control, and man is it clever. It has pronounced ball detents and behaves a bit like a magnetic control ring. This rotates between the three options: a white light, which is just the Cree LED without any of the filters, but with a quick turn of the dial, you can slide a red filter or a green filter in front of that emitter. Now, one important thing to note is that this is a moving physical mechanism that joins the inside and the outside of the light, so it is a potential point of failure. The light is IPX8 rated though, so it should easily keep water out. But let's just say that with this particular design, I'm not going to go ahead and test its ability to stop water ingress. Now, there is just a tiny amount of play as it rotates, but as you turn it around, it kind of locks each filter into place. But when locked in, the mini reflectors are aligned very nicely and are well centered. And if we move back into the design, you'll know that this slim body is also inherently smooth. Unfortunately, that means if you do set it down, since it has no anti-roll features, it will continue rolling. And in addition to that, tail standing is a little difficult since the tail switch protrudes slightly and could easily get knocked over as the head is significantly larger than the tail. But on that tail cap, you also do have a provision for a lanyard. And one nice thing about this is the fact that it's on the side instead of cutting over into the actual end. So when it's on and you do have it tail standing, it doesn't get in the way. Finally, that holster is made of mainly nylon with an elastic loop, as well as a nylon loop on the back for your belt. And while it's not going to win any awards, it does work well enough. Now, the holster will fit most 18650 or 21700 lights, and the H3 is a little bit loose in here, but it would probably stay just fine unless you were somersaulting or cartwheeling. Or I mean, if you're doing a tactical roll. Yeah, that's what I meant. Now, this definitely does look and feel like a well-built aluminum light. There's a spring at both ends, the tail and the head, and that helps keep the light's circuit connected, even if it does get knocked around a little bit. This is also nice because I found that you can use their extra tall 21700 cell with built-in USB-C charging, or you can move to a much shorter, unprotected flat top, and it'll work just the same. Now, there is a lot of thought to help your light perform well and help it look good as well. Speaking of looking good, the anodizing is a satin Type 3 black coating, and it's very uniform, seems tough, and helps keep it protected. The threads are square cut and well lubed, but if anything were to happen to yours, you do have a 15-day replacement if you have any manufacturer defects, and they also give a very generous 5-year warranty for repairs under normal use. Now, if we move out to the serious side of the light, the H3 does come with that Cree XHP35 high LED, and it's a pretty decent choice for a long-distance flashlight. It is a 3535 size LED, but it's 12 volts, so don't go thinking you can do an emitter swap for a Nichia 519A anytime soon. Now, the LED is the high or high intensity version, which means it doesn't have a dome, but that's going to help a little bit with the throw. Now, this particular bin is pretty low on the CRI chart, but it does have a pretty decent lumen per watt. The color temperature isn't mentioned, but I did test it with my Oppo Lightmaster Pro, and it came in to be right under 6500K. Now, the main orange peel reflector does a very good job of evening out that light, and the mini reflectors on that rotating mechanism don't seem to cause any unwelcome beam artifacts. The bezel is silver-colored stainless steel and appears to have a blasted finish instead of being coated. And it does carry small crenulations, so that means if you did leave it on a table, you would have a little bit of light poking through. The beam profile is fairly throwy for its size, but only reaches 400 meters, so it's more of a long-distance tactical light. And I gave you a few specifications earlier, but as far as all of the dimensions, it is 6.57 inches long, or 16.71 centimeters. The head is 1.63 inches, or 4.14 centimeters. The body, like I said, is 0.9 inches, or 2.39 centimeters. And the weight, with the battery inside, is 240 grams, or 8.4 ounces, but without, it weighs a paltry 166 grams, or 5.97 ounces. Just to get a taste for how large this is, let's go ahead and compare it to Brynite's T28 Artemis. Now if we stack the heads side by side, you'll see there's about a ½ inch difference, but I mean that could be very well mainly because this one is a zoomable light, so if we have it fully extended, you notice that difference even more. I don't know how well it shows on the camera, but I'd say it's about 1.25 inches difference between the two. And that's not the only difference between these two lights. The H3 does have that magnetic control ring, while Brynite goes with a more traditional lever that swaps between separate LEDs. Now the user interface on the H3 is pretty basic, and that's to the benefit of you. Only having that rear tail switch as well as the E switch on the side. All you're going to be able to get out of the tail switch is an on-off, and that's it. Once it is on, the E switch will switch between low, medium, high, and turbo, or if you hold down, it will activate a strobe. And there's no lockout, so all you can do to stop it from turning on is slightly unscrew the cap to disable those anodized threads. In addition to that, I didn't notice any pulse width modulation anywhere on the H3, and that is to be expected as it does use a constant current boost driver to help step up that cell voltage to 12 volts. Now the Cyansky H3 does come with a button top 21700 cell that includes USB-C charging built in, and it is 76.2 millimeters long, which is pretty long compared to a more standard cell, so it won't fit many standalone chargers. Now I do have mixed opinions about putting the charging circuit on the cell itself. Having it on the cell means the flashlight can be more waterproof, but it also means that you can't switch cells so easily. That said, I did try a couple of other standard cells, and they all seem to work fine, like that Wurkkos I showed you earlier. Now the H3 is also compatible with two CR123As, but I didn't have any available unfortunately, so I couldn't test that out. Now the 21700 cell, its built-in charging seems to work quite well. It started off around 1.5 amps using a USB A to C cable, and then it slowly trailed off and once it got near full capacity at just over 3 hours. The cell does have a little LED in the center. It'll show red when it's charging, and that LED will turn green once it's complete. One nice thing I noticed is that USB-C to C worked on this cell as well. So that was a nice surprise. Now if we move on to performance, I have to tell you I'm quite impressed and pleased with the Cyansky H3. Well, I guess I have to say that I'm quite impressed with Cyansky. They seem to be the most forthcoming that I've tested so far, and this is rated at 1300 lumens, and it's not uncommon for a manufacturer to say, this is what our light's rated at, but it's what the light actually has at turn on. Fortunately, Cyansky tells you exactly what this is going to have at 30 seconds. So when I first turned this on, I did get 1478 lumens, so almost 200 lumens higher than its specification, and it dropped to just over 1300 lumens, which is actually what it's rated for at that 30-second mark. Another nice thing, even though it started 200 lumens higher than it specified, it still ran for 2.5 hours. So that's where it dropped down below that 10% for ANSI rating, but continued to run to about 3 hours and 1 minute, so very close to specifications. All this for a 12-volt XHP35 is pretty decent and pretty reasonable. As far as throw, at turn on I was able to get 415 meters, and at 30 seconds, when we're only supposed to get 400 meters, I ended up getting 408. So I consider that another win. Alright, now let's get this outside. We'll do a quick comparison between the Cyansky H3 and the Brynite T28 Artemis, just so you can see the difference between having separate LEDs and filters for one single LED. So let's get out there then we'll get back in because it's been pretty cold. All right, guys, I'm outside with the Cyansky H3 as well as the Brynite T28 Artemis. Let's go ahead and turn it on low. This is low for the H3. Now we're going to go to medium and high and turbo. Now that we're in turbo, let's rotate through these color filters. Okay, that's green and red. Now remember, red is great for coyotes. And if you switch back to the green, this is fantastic for feral hogs. And this is as per Cyansky. So with that said, let's switch over to the Brynite T28 Artemis. And I don't know if you guys can see this right now, but this is low. Now this doesn't have stepped modes, but it will ramp up in a stepless fashion. So this is maximum. This is also a zoomy. So you can switch to a much wider visible spectrum, or you can focus all that light. Now, this has that dial, so we can rotate over to green, as well as red. All right, well, there we have it. Let's go ahead and shine both of them just so you can see everything. So we have green from the Cyansky H3 and red from the Brynite T28 Artemis. All right, now let's get back inside so we can finish things up. All right, guys, now we're back inside. I showed you exactly what the H3 could do, as well as compared it to the T28 Artemis from Brynite. So now, I want to know what you guys think down below. So tell me, do you think it's better having the filters for the single LED, or do you think that the T28 Artemis with its separate emitters ended up working better? So my final thoughts for the H3, I have to say that the color filter mechanism works very well, and I love the fact that it has a super simple UI. It's not really one of those ones that you're going to get confused on when you need it to count. That being said, the H3, having 400 meters of throw and 1300 lumens, this XHP35 is a good emitter for a well-rounded light. Now there might be brighter, there might be ones that throw further, but having everything in one compact package definitely means that the Cyansky H3 is a light that needs to be looked at for sure. So if you want one light that's not too big to carry, throws relatively far, and is still usable at close range, but gives you the option of a red, green, and white light, the Cyansky H3 might just be the perfect light for you. The price and where to buy it is listed down below in the description, and I hope that we were able to give you some good, useful information to help you make a determination as to whether or not this could be a good light for you. Also, don't forget that we do have that giveaway going for the Wurkkos FC12. So if you need to watch the video again, definitely do so. Look for those numbers that we hid throughout the entire video. Send them again to our YouTube at torchesandtactical.com, and you'll be entered to win this light. Also, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so we can keep giving away lights like that and others. And that also helps us get our reviews going so we can continue to put out videos for you. Thank you guys so much for being with me here today, and we'll see you in the next one.